always thought we lived in a free country. I thought, especially during an election campaign, we were free to talk about matters of public policy. I thought we lived in Australia rather than, say, China. But check out what happened today outside a polling booth in the Victorian electorate of Jagga Jagga. A Family First Senate candidate was told by an Australian Electoral Commission worker that she wasn't allowed to advertise her policies because, well, some people just didn't like them.
I've had a few people who are quite upset. I just want to speak to my supervisors.
What are they upset about?
About what you're speaking to them about.
What about speaking about?
About late-term abortions.
Okay, you don't like that?
It's not my opinion.
It's a horrible thing, doll. And that's why I want to stop it.
If I can ask you, if you would like to speak to everybody about your policies, you're more than welcome to. But just that point for now, if I can please ask
what can I say then? What can I say? Our
Everything
policies?
else, every other of your policies.
I'm not allowed to mention abortion.
Just for now, I've had some complaints and I just want to run it up the chain,
okay,
if you wouldn't mind.
All right, thank you.
Now, that video went viral after it was posted online by Adelaide law professor Dr Joanna Howe. And then Dr Howe became a target of the Electoral Commission's penchant for censorship. They posted a message on her Instagram page. I'll read it for you. We're respectfully asking you to take the video down from this person's privacy. They're a hard-working temporary officer doing her best to fulfil her role in a complicated environment. Maybe someone needs to tell the Australian Electoral Commission it's really not that complicated. Whether you're pro-abortion or anti-abortion, you have the right to put forward your position, especially when you're standing for public office. Rather than respectfully requesting the video be taken down, perhaps the Electoral Commission should respectfully be thanking Dr Joanna Howe for bringing it to their attention and respectfully apologising to the Family First candidate for getting in the way of her communicating her policies, as she's perfectly entitled to do, Liz.
Indeed. Well, this is election interference, period. Plain and simple, which is the very antithesis of the AEC's remit. They should have, in fact, apologised and said, obviously, this girl hasn't been trained properly. As someone who's worked in state, federal and local governments for over 8 years, that person being me, I have seen all kinds of biffs on polling booths. Pre-polling especially, it gets incredibly fiery. People have massive arguments, but I have never once seen in person or in the media an AEC representative telling a candidate to shut up about their own policies. Oh, you're making people uncomfortable. Well, good. Congratulations. That means those people still have a soul. This is a federal election issue. The other side of this debate, 40 pro-abortion organisations have lobbied the federal government and let them know that whoever wins government this time round, they're demanding that they fulfil all their demands. But you get one pro-life voice, one person giving a voice to the voiceless, one person sticking up for the almost roundabout, we don't get exact numbers for obvious reasons, but approximately 80,000 babies a year in Australia who are terminated. Just one person. And all of a sudden you've got the AEC flying in the face of their own remit to get this woman to shut up at all costs. It's an absolute disgrace. They should have come out and simply said, sorry, we do acknowledge that this is the very opposite of what AEC stands for and our jobs on pre-polling booths and polling booths on the day. We apologise. This person's now being retrained. That was the only appropriate response. And instead, they've turned around after people have been concerned about the freedom of speech happening at pre-polling booths and then asked the preeminent pro-life voice in Australia, Dr Joanna Howe, to help cover up what they did by taking down their post. Irony is dead. It's completely unforgivable, Joe.
I think fair enough to say, don't reveal the identity of the worker who is obviously quite young, and obviously all the people who work on these booths, they're doing it just on a temporary basis. So they're not people who work for the AAC.
But they are trained not to tell candidates not to spruik their lawful policies.
You would think so. I mean, look, obviously it's very concerning if that is in fact what is happening, and that's been done. But she did say, look, I just need to speak to my supervisor. Would you mind just not doing it for now till I can get some direction on this? So I don't know if it's the end of the world, and do we know what decision was ultimately made? I don't know if we do. But I think the real story here and the real villains is not the AEC worker, but Jagga Jagga is a seat based around sort of inner Melbourne, around the sort of city of Darebin, which is very, very heavily green tinged. I think they've probably already signed their own treaty, and they're always doing exciting new things with their rubbish collection to make it more sustainable. But so I suspect that there'd be a lot of kind of vexatious complainants, very much to the left of the political spectrum, who have made a point. They're the sort of people who would say, sorry, this is very triggering for me. And so I think it's actually them who the blame should be levelled at, rather than a young temporary worker who is just trying to respond to this sort of avalanche of complaints and has just said, look, if you wouldn't mind just not doing it for now, please.
Not talk about your policies. I mean, that's a joke.
Yeah, well, again, what is the final decision of the AEC?
Worker honestly thought that was appropriate, then she must have received no training whatsoever.
But she would have just received the complaint. She wouldn't have known what the person had been saying. God knows what these sort of hysterical hyper Karens were saying about what the.
And I reckon it must have been hyper Karens, because when you listen to the response of the Family First candidate,
she seemed
soft, very polite and pretty reasonable, considering she was being told to shut up about her own policies.
Indeed.
So I thought she treated the AEC worker with absolute politeness. So I struggle to believe that any complaints about that candidate would have been because the candidate was being rude or aggressive.
Indeed. And hats off to Ray Rancy there in Victoria in the seat of Jagga Jagga. You are in hater heartland. Strength to your arm. To Spain now, where Spanish news broadcasts are going to be policed